Thank you, guys. Thanks to everybody at B&H for inviting me again. Eric from Canon. You know, Canon's one of my sponsors. They're terrific people. You know, I'm a big fan of their products and the company in general. Just a little bit about my background. I've been a professional photographer for 35 years. Or not quite 35, 34 years and 10 months. But I started out in a small newspaper in Topeka, Kansas in 1980. Followed my mentor to the Denver Post in Denver, Colorado. That newspaper, worked there for about 6 years. And the last 3 years of that, I had started a relationship with Sports Illustrated. That continues today. So getting close to 3 decades, getting close to 30 years at Sports Illustrated, about 2,000 assignments and 70 covers. So I'm very proud of the accomplishments I've had at Sports Illustrated and in all my journalistic endeavors. I've never considered myself a sports photographer. I've always considered myself a photojournalist who happens to shoot sport. And there's a distinction there because I think as a sports photographer, as a photojournalist, you need to be able to tell a story. And that's like always been my thing, is that like the pictures need to illustrate what the story we may be working on. I work more in the commercial fields now, so I'm telling stories about products for consumers. Same idea, a little different genre. So let's move on. Boards of Light. This is the Canon program who sponsors, me throughout the year, speaking presentations like this one. And so you want to be a sports photographer. So let's get a few of the down and dirty facts about being a sports photographer. Number one, there are more sports photos on the market than ever before. I can't remember the number, but I think it's 17 billion pictures will be taken this next year. I think it's some incredible pictures. There were 1 billion pictures taken with the year the Brownie camera was introduced in 1901, something like that. So we're saturated with photographs. Number two, there are more sports photographers in the market than ever before. They're everywhere. Number three, an abundance of photos and photographers have driven prices down in sports photography market. Supply goes up, prices go down. This is basic, if you've ever had an economics class, this is kind of where we are right now. We've got a lot of photographs out there saturating the market. Number four, the presence of easy-to-use digital cameras has brought a lot of sports photographers into the business. And number five, staff photographers are becoming increasingly rare. Okay, do you still want to be a sports photographer? So let's go to the positive side. There's never been more sports photographs being sold than what are being sold in today's marketplace. Incredible numbers. The digital marketplace has changed the format of how things are done and how pictures are sold in the market. Number two, there's never been more opportunity to sell sports photographs than in today's marketplace. There's a ton of opportunities out there. You have to find them. Number three, cameras and technology have taken the quality and content of sports photography to an astonishing level. Compared to what the cameras were when I started in the industry, it's just that there is no comparison. It's just amazing what these cameras can do now and how well thought out they are. It's just amazing. And we're going to keep getting better. We're just going to keep getting better. Number four, the greatest sports photograph still hasn't been taken. That's a really important fact to think about. You can always aspire to do better. And certainly, every time I'm on a job, every time I'm out, I'm thinking, what's the next great one? How can you make something that's going to really define who you are? Number five, the opportunity is still there for the properly motivated photographer. Okay, 5 things need to happen for you to succeed in sports photography. We're doing a lot of pontificating here at the beginning of this presentation. We'll get into the pictures and what I think will help you understand a bit more about how to make the photographs, and that will take you to the next level. However, these are important parts about if you're an aspiring sports photographer to move forward. You have to be a great photographer, not good, not above average. You have to be great now to make it. The margin for those middle levels is just not there anymore. Number two, you have to be a businessman or woman first, photographer second. Number three, you must have a business plan that highlights your photographic skills. If you are really good, like I have a friend that's a wonderful photographer at horse events, equestrian events, you have to tailor his business plan to that. He can't put up a thing that says Joe Smith photographer. It needs to be Joe Smith equestrian photographer, Joe Smith equine photographer, whatever his certain specialty needs to be. You need to highlight what you do and then figure out how to make a business plan to make that financially viable. Number four, you must be able to market yourself, market yourself, market yourself. Number five, see number four above. This is a marketing business. Like any other, business, you've got to know how to market yourself, got to know how to sell yourself. Okay, let's concentrate on item one. That's going to be about photography, and hope we'll go forward. So unique angles, unique pictures, always. We're always looking for things in basketball, baseball. For me, my career has been about the major sports: football, basketball, baseball, hockey, the Olympics. You know, I always pretend I know something about the Olympic sports when I get to the Olympics every 4 years. The reality is that no one knows anything about speed skating. No one knows, except the Dutch. You know, no one knows anything about the discus throw. You only see it once every 4 years. But that doesn't mean your skills as a sports photographer won't allow you to make good photographs of those situations. Like looking for graphic angles, you know, something that's going to give you something different. That's a remote camera, which we'll go into how we do that a little later. The personalities and the people involved, you know, don't put your camera down. Big mistake photographers make: don't put your camera down. Keep it up. Can't make good pictures if you're not looking through the camera. You know, the faces. I get into this a lot, and this is like a lot where you talk about positioning. You know, there used to be in the old Kodak Brownie, you know, film boxes, there used to be a set of instructions in there. It said, you know, if you're not getting good pictures, move closer. If you're not getting good pictures, try bending your knees. They're still pretty good advice, you know. You get into those, in football in particular, you get down low, you're going to make those pictures look a lot more dynamic. Anytime you go low, it insinuates the height. You know, this is a 50 millimeter lens. Your positioning at sports is really critical to know where the action happened. I keep a 50 millimeter lens around my neck in football, and made a lot of really wonderful pictures like this one with a 50 millimeter lens. 7 things about football photography. If you've watched my previous videos, I only had 5 things, so you guys are getting 2 additional things, you know, extra bang for your buck here. Number 7, number 1, do your homework. Know who's playing and what kind of action to expect. Got a team that's a running team or a passing team, you know, whatever. Know that going in. Number 2, know your viewpoint and plan accordingly. Always have a plan. Number 3, good advice told years ago. This was done in the days of speed graphic cameras. 10 yards ahead of a good team, 10 yards behind a bad team. Now it's more like 40 yards ahead of a good team, 40 yards behind a bad team. But, you know, things are going to play to where you come to. Number 4, vary your angles and lenses. Shoot horizontal and vertical, loose and tight, front lit and back lit. All those things. Vary your shoot up. Give the editor something to look at. Give your clients something to look at. Number 5, it's all about the faces. That's all. You could write that about every sport. For me, I think football, because the challenge of getting the faces, you know, is more difficult because of the face mask and shields and all the stuff they wear, makes it more difficult. Number 6, what chances can I take to bring about a unique image? When you have done a lot of sports photography, a lot of times you're challenging yourself. And so what we want to do is say, what can I do that hasn't been done? What does the venue bring maybe that I can do different? Number 7, how am I reacting to how the game's being played? Am I getting lazy? Concentration is a big issue for anybody who has worked a lot and done a lot of repetitive things. So for me, it's easier for me to kind of fall asleep at the wheel because I've done it a lot and not maybe make them pictures that I should be making because I'm not paying close enough attention. So, football field. I guess I'll use this. If you anybody see this, okay? Okay, so like I always talk about this, I don't want to sound like John Madden, you know, making like X's and O's all over the screen and stuff, but there is a method to the madness on the football, and I'll give you like kind of I don't know if it's the inside scoop, but certainly give you some ideas about how I do it, and it's a really basic, from a football standpoint, it's a very basic standpoint. From a photography standpoint, maybe not so much so. There's always a weak side and a strong side to every football team in the offensive end. So it's generally the right side. So if you look at things statistically, a team is going to run the ball to where their strongest offensive linemen are the majority of the time. The professional level, not quite as much. The college level, more so. High school and little league level, every single time. If you've got some, you know, guy like the kid in the blind side on your right side tackle, trust me, that team is going to run over him every single time they run the ball. You need to know that. Weak side, strong side. The other thing is that when it comes to the passing game in football, most quarterbacks are right-handed, so they set in this manner. It's a lot harder to throw across your body to the other side. So if you know that a quarterback is lining up this way, there's going to be more passes to that side of the field, which is also the strong side of the field, right side. That left tackle is protecting his blind side, just like in the movie. That's really the truth. Okay, so a few basic things about that. Let's just keep that in mind. At the lower levels, at Pop Warner, high school, you can almost take that to the bank. It's pretty much going to be that way every time. Get there before the ball does. That's one of the critical things. Your reaction time is just so critical in any kind of sports photography. Get there before the ball, you're going to do better. You notice, I was speaking to somewhat earlier, you see the out of focus in the background, really isolated in here. Try to fill the frame up as much as you can. It's difficult because you're trying to focus and these people's bodies are tumbling all over, and it's difficult to keep it all together. It takes a lot of concentration. Tighter you can get, look at the background in this picture. That's what your eye has to come to their faces because, the background is completely blown out. Getting there before the faces. Again, now I work for the NFL a lot. Those logos are great for me. Anytime you get the logo. Yet again, the faces. I'm just all about the faces on this stuff. I just think, it brings the reader in there. They can see this, they can identify. To get down to these game time or game ending plays and stuff, loosen up. Make sure you can get it all in there, because if you shoot this picture like this, it may not be as indicative of what the play was. Another 50 millimeter lens shot here. Make a lot of pictures like that just by knowing, being in the right place, right time, having the camera up and ready to go. This is something this is from this year's Super Bowl, which was my 29th Super Bowl. People think, oh, you went to the Super Bowl. Boy, that's great. I can count on one hand the number of really good Super Bowl pictures I've made. Not very many, 2 or 3. This is not one of them, but it is pretty good. It's not bad. It's pretty good, but it's not great. But it's not easy to get great pictures of the Super Bowl. It's very congested and difficult, and it's like more of an event than it is a game. Yeah. Again, like being on top of things, this is a really unique picture. Just got to be on top of it all the time. The eyes. This is like eyes make the picture. Get in there, be able to see it. Guys are always trying to tear each other's heads off in various ways. It's like the kind of chaos that you see in a football game. This is very indicative of keeping it all together in the frame is very hard. But notice like here, the ball hasn't landed yet. It's like if you're there ahead of the play, you're always going to be better. It may not be the best picture, but if you're there ready for it ahead of the play, you're going to get the better pictures. Another 50 millimeter lens shot, right there. Another 50 millimeter lens shot. It's like sometimes you go to games and you swear to God, all you needed to do was take that 50 millimeter lens. Sometimes that's the way it works. That's a 50 millimeter lens shot. That's a 50 millimeter lens shot. So, the celebration and the emotion, I always say the beauty and the drama, the emotion of sports, really kind of what I try to drive home. That's what I want to be about. This is Tom Brady. I know probably New York probably don't care so much for Tom Brady, but, I've had a chance to watch him play now for, whatever it's been, 15 years or something. Tremendous player. I think going to go down in history as one of the great ones. Seems like a really good guy, which means a lot to me, considering that there's a lot of not so good people out there. The elements. People ask me all about the elements. Like one of the things, you have to perform. Nobody wants any excuses about, the weather. Cold, rainy, wet, whatever it is, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You still have to perform. You still have to produce. The snow brings about an interesting set of technical problems because your autofocus is if the snowflakes are large enough, your autofocus wants to jump to the snowflakes instead of to the subject. This is jubilation from this last Super Bowl. So I always point out this picture because this is a since deposed coach Jim Schwartz of the Detroit Lions, but I always wonder why Randy Jackson from American Idol was on the sidelines. The elements. You have cold weather. This is in Green Bay on a day of probably 20 below. Difficult to keep everything going. But the elements also introduce a set of parameters that you need to cover. How do you illustrate that? This snowed, I think this is in Chicago. It snowed 4 or 5 inches during the game. So how do you illustrate that? What's the best way to illustrate that? I elected to go up and show how much snow there was. And we ended up having a nice set of pictures out of this that, you know, we wouldn't have normally taken. You know, sometimes the moments are good. You got to be at the right place, the right time. There's a classic example of, like, this was all manually focused because we could not, you couldn't autofocus in snow this heavy. It wouldn't work. You know, at every point of every day, pretty much take us to the bank, unless it's unusual circumstances, there's going to be a time at an event where the ambient light in the stadium is going to match the sky. Pretty much take it to the bank. Sometimes no, sometimes you get some cloud cover or something that may change that, but generally speaking, that's going to happen. And you need to be aware of that. Like in the summertime at a baseball game, it happens in July, it happens about 8:15, 8:30, something like that. In the spring, it may be at another track and field event, it may be, you know, at 5:30 in the afternoon. But you have to be aware of that all the time. It really makes it a dynamic thing. You know, your angles here, to get this background, which I really like, that's the scoreboard. I actually laid on my stomach, well, sort of. I mean, I got as low as I could. My stomach kind of rounds out. It's not hard to get really low, but I got as low as I could to get up there. And then you catch that light much more effectively on his eye because of the angle. You know, similar picture. You know, it's like these guys are just so spectacularly, you know, in condition. It's just amazing how, you know, I've done a lot of work with, this is Calvin Johnson from the Lions. I've done a lot of work with him for Nike. He's a big Nike guy. And it's like, just watch him warm up. It's just like, it's like watching a thoroughbred, you know, run the backstretch. It's just amazing. You know, people, besides, you do the swimsuit issue, one of the ones you always get, because I'm kind of a football photographer, say, have you ever been run over? Well, the answer is yes, twice in my career at Sports Illustrated. Once in 1992 in the manual focus days where I just held on with the long lens too long and then got run over. And then this time in Houston about probably 4 or 5 years ago, in which I just held in with a 50 millimeter lens too long. And you see here's the first frame, the second frame, the third frame. You know, they're getting pretty close here, you can tell. And then that's me, number 144, getting flying through the air back there in the background. So the crazy part was that, like, it knocked me over, and I've got a, you know, big 400 millimeter 2.8 lens, you know, here, so I'm trying to keep it from banging into the ground. So I'm flying backwards like this, trying to hold that lens from hitting the ground. And then I land on my back. So then I'm like a turtle that's on the shell, you know, I can't get back up because I've got all this weight behind me. And so this kid, Des Bryant, he says, come on, bro, I'll get you up, come on, but he tries to pull me up, he can't get me up. And the referee's standing there, he said, hey, let me give you your other hand. So neither one of them could get me up. So I just rolled over and he said, you guys call yourself athletes? Come on. This is probably the most famous football picture I've taken. This is a Super Bowl, very famous picture that David Tyree trapping the ball against his helmet. Very relieved to have that photograph. This was an interesting story. I've told the story a number of times. If you've heard it before, I apologize, but it has been in a number of ESPN things and documentaries and NFL film things. This play started, if you're a Giants fan, you would know, it started with Eli Manning scrambling forever for probably 7 or 8 seconds in the behind the line of scrimmage, avoiding a sack, sure sack. One was a sure sack. He's almost on the ground. And then he heaves this ball down the field. And I'm following the flight of the ball. And my first frame of the catch, the hands are cut off. I'm too tight. This is full frame here. This is like the whole image. So the first frame, his hands are cut off. And then the next frame, it comes down. And then helmet. And then he's hitting him, like maybe the 4th or 5th frame. But then you notice on about the 5th or 6th frame, on the left-hand side of the frame, it starts to vignette. It starts to get kind of a funny brownish yellow color. And then the next frame is mostly vignetted. It's mostly brown and yellow. And then the final frame is entirely yellow. And what had happened was a security guard walked across as the play was happening. And so some poor guy, maybe 2 spaces to the left of me, of the critical moment, when the ball's trapped on the helmet, has got a picture of a yellow security guard jacket. So sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. You know, I had an editor at Sports Illustrated used to say, if you can make a picture that makes one sport look like another sport, generally speaking, it's going to be pretty good. So this would be basketball looking like football. This is a remote camera thing that we do through the basket, through the glass of the basket. Nice angle, unique perspective. Okay, 7 things about basketball photography. Number 1, it's all about the angle. Try to give as many perspectives as possible. Now, if you don't have a million cameras, you know, a lot of cameras, like I have a lot of cameras, I can put cameras in a lot of different spots. If you don't, then you have to use manual remotes. Manual remotes involve moving yourself to different positions. You know, they call it manual zoom too. If you know the zoom lens, you can move forward or move backward. That's a manual zoom, okay? Move yourself around a little bit, give a different perspective. Number two, choose your backgrounds carefully. Number one mistake all photographers make, certainly the number one mistake all amateur photographers make, is choosing backgrounds which confuse the subject. Choose your background carefully. Number three, find the ball and you find your picture in basketball, always follow the ball. Number four, know the players, their habits, and rituals. Now, if you follow the Cleveland Cavaliers, you know that LeBron James, before every single game, is going to go over to the scorers, to the scorekeeper, and they're going to have that rosin there. He's going to put it on his hands, he's going to throw it in the air every single time. So if you are looking for that picture, that's going to happen every single game. If you know that, you should plan accordingly. Number five, take advantage of the unique aspects of the venue. Now, things are a little homogenized now in terms of like how arenas and sports venues look. However, there's usually in every one something that's a little bit unique, and you can usually use that to your advantage sometimes with positioning of cameras, lenses, and yourself. What is the picture no one else is shooting? I always look at that a lot and say, if there's seven photographers shooting from over here, I think I'm going to go over here. I'd rather not get what everybody else is having. Number seven, shoot something horizontal. Editors are sick of vertical basketball photos. Basketball's a really vertical game. Think horizontal every once in a while. Okay, so my tips on basketball. What I like to do in the NBA, I like to be way in here as far as I can get inside. They now have an escape lane for the players to get off of the court, so I often can't get as far over as I'd like to be. And there's usually a TV camera in here as well. But the reason you want to be so far inside in an NBA game is because the referees work right in this area. So you can actually be inside of the referee here and not be blocked by the referee. You get out too far, the referee's in your road. In college basketball, I like to be clear out here because the referees work in here in college basketball. So it's more a question of avoiding the referee. With three referees now in all the games instead of two, used to be always two referees, now there's three, it's become more difficult because they're more mobile on the baseline. The other thing, and this is like a matter of practicality taught to me very early on as a basketball guy, is that right-handed players shoot like this. If you are on the left-hand side, you're going to get blocked by their arms a lot. You're not going to be able to see their face. So generally speaking, I want to be on the right-hand side of the court as you're facing it. It just increases your chances of probability of making the photograph, including their face. So that's about it. We position cameras like all over the place in basketball. We put them low down here, like that thing. We put them up on the basket, looking down, up on the catwalks, different things. Always trying to change it up. This is a strobe basketball kit. What I would take to a game. You can notice there's like all these little eyelets on here. Those are all to put safety cables on. So there's no issues with something falling. If it did something broke, you'd have the camera safety. No one get hurt. And of course, everything lined up, batteries. Everything is labeled because it's like we just want to get it back the same way. It's complicated enough without being organized. This is kind of what it looks like there. NBA game, when I was doing a lot of the NBA, we used to get there at noon for a 7:30 game. So it's basically a noon to midnight, 12-hour day to get it all done. That's what it looks like when we're hanging that glass camera. And here, you notice everything is not only clamped, but double clamped. So we clamp a clamp to the clamp to make sure that there's, first off, no vibration, but also hopefully no possibility of anything breaking and falling. Same way here. Notice the camera's hung upside down. It drives the editor crazy. We don't like to do it. Unfortunately, in this position, that's the only way you can do it. You just can't get it bent right to make it sit upright. These are the units we use to calibrate what's called shutter lag, so that all the cameras will catch one flash at one time. The assistant is programming that camera. That's a side angle camera. When you do remote photography, everything has to be manually focused, because if you're doing shutter lag and your camera has to find a focus, the shutter lag can't be consistent. So everything is manually focused. We focus at a spot. Hopefully that's the right spot. We try to shoot with we're doing with strobe. We have a little bit of depth of field, so helps a little bit with strobe. Now you have to watch this carefully. There's see the difference in this picture. We're doing a test here. This is frame 1. This is frame 2. Can you guys tell the difference? Nobody can tell the difference, right? Nobody can? Look at all this elevation I have. I have a good 6 inches I'm off the floor here. And then it's always nice of you, Dwayne Wade, to come and check my remotes for me, make sure they're all good. Yeah. Looking good, Stro. Good, baby. Let's go. And this is what the pictures, a typical game would look like. Kind of this is a Knicks when Jeremy Lin was there. This is kind of what that game, the pictures we'd get typically. The editors would pull out of 1,000 or 1,500 pictures, they'd probably pull this down to, maybe 150 or something. And this is what I pulled out of it, from my perspective. These are all, so far, these are all cameras, remote lenses, not handheld. And why do we do that? Because this is the referee's legs, So this is pretty much what my view of the game is. Most of the time it's the butt of the referee. Changing it up, this is a 200 f2 lens, really shallow depth of field lens, shot very, very tight. Just go for broke, try to keep it all in the frame. That's what that glass cam looks like. The reaction of the players is always, good. They call this a hard foul. When we've been fortunate to have a lot of championship games in Boston over the last 15 years. When the NBA comes about and has their championship game, there's a finite number of spots on the floor, just because of how many people are interested in the coverage of the game. So our SI's really star basketball photographers come in for that, and I get relegated to the ninth floor of the Gardens, way up in the top, and it's interesting because it's a totally different perspective, and I kind of like it. There's a restroom nearby, there's soda and candy. It's really pretty easy, much easier than being on the court. And you get some perspectives that you cannot get at other games. You can't get this shot at any other kind of event because that closed. There's usually people sitting in those seats. You can't get to it. From a standpoint of locale and giving an identity to the picture, this parquet floor, this is the old Boston parquet floor. Everyone knows instantly where that photograph is taken. You can see now in this picture, these are not my camera, but you can see all the iron up there. That's all remote cameras from. If you're looking for a niche, and we did talk a little bit about finding an edge, finding a niche in sports photography, this is the next big growth area, women's sports. Women athletes are getting so good, and it's going to keep growing, and it's going to keep expanding. And if you're looking for an area that's going to grow, that's the one that's going to keep growing. My experience with women's sports is mostly limited to like the Olympics or, maybe a little bit of women's basketball down at the University of Connecticut. I go down there every once in a while. But you can see even here, look at the muscle definition on this woman. I mean, she's definitely, the athleticism of the women players just keeps getting higher and higher. Generic pictures, stock agents love generic pictures. This picture has sold many, many times for me just because it's very generic. From an art director standpoint, room to put type all over the place here, type over there, all that kind of stuff. All things to consider. Like I say, you can't make the picture if you don't have the camera up. This is an NCAA basketball. You notice we had all those cameras hung on the basket support. In NCAA basketball, there's no cameras on the basket support at all. Zero, none. They don't allow it. So you have come up with a lot of creative positions for NCAA tournament basketball. It's a low angle remote we do there, was like similar to that apparatus there. Another one there right underneath the basket. You notice though how smart the NCAA is about marketing their stuff. They know you do cameras from this angle, so they have this NCAA logo up there. I mean, they're very, very savvy about their marketing. The baseline, the courts now at all the NCAA events are regulated. They all have this black baseline to them. You get the right colors. It's a really nice reflection. Camera's got to be flat on the ground to get that. This is an overhead remote. You notice this is where like so much better over film as opposed to digital. We do a camera like this. When we did it on film, we had 36 exposures. You better use them very judiciously. This, with the you can have a 64 gig card now, right, or 128 gigs or whatever they call it, gazillion, whatever it is. I mean, you can get all kinds of pictures, and you can motor through something like this and not worry about it, except for your post-processing is a little more, detailed. but you can get that moment where the eyes are right in between the net. On film, this would have been very, very difficult to get, just because you wouldn't have the opportunities. It takes a lot of repeated motor-driven effort to get that kind of photograph. You know, this is a camera that's underneath the benches where the press is, looking up. The reaction to championship events is always great. The best is the Olympics. There's nothing better than the Olympic reaction, but college basketball is also very good. You know, it's Kevin Garnett, a guy that I love as a player. Don't know him, but just love him as a player. Superbly conditioned athlete. One of the best conditioned athletes I've ever seen. Just a little backstory on this picture. This is a guy named Ray Allen, who's been in the NBA a long time, 15 years probably. And he's the all-time leader in three-point shots. Like, you know, made more three-point field goals than anybody else in the history of the NBA. So he was going to break this record. He needed one three-pointer to break it before the game. We knew it. Everybody was anticipating it. And so the question is, how do you position yourself to get the right photograph? So I elected to go to the opposite end of the floor. And I was the only one that elected to do that. I don't know why. It seemed fairly obvious to me that the right thing to do would be to go to the opposite end of the floor. The reason being is that it's a three-pointer. The shot has to happen on the periphery of the court. So from the opposite end of the court, you're going to almost definitely have a view of him, because the defense doesn't come out to block you. If you're on that end of the court, chances are he's either going to be too close to you or too far away. So the picture was pretty good of him shooting. We have, you know, him jumping up and shooting. That was pretty good. I calculated, and correctly, that the reaction was going to turn around to me at the opposite end of the court. And a lot of people asked me afterwards, well, how did you know that the reaction would go that way? I said, I knew because Ray Allen's wife was sitting directly behind me in a seat, and the reaction will almost always, go to the family first. So something to keep in mind. When your kid scores a soccer goal, you know, they're going to be very proud of it, and they're going to turn to their family first. You know, I just love this picture. I think it's like hilarious. Rajon Rondo is one of those guys that's like when he's playing somebody like LeBron, he's like the dog that gets, you know, grabs the whole of your leg, you know, pant leg, you can't get rid of him. This is, I'll give a little shout out to the Sports Illustrated photo editors. This is a picture I would have never, well, I wouldn't say never. Chances are I wouldn't have selected this picture. I wouldn't have looked at it and said, oh, this is a great picture. But the thing that makes it unique, you have all 6 players from the Ottawa Senators in one frame. The whole team is in one frame. Very unusual. A lot of times in hockey, any hockey people out here? Photograph hockey? Yeah. Hockey Krishnas, I call you. Yeah, hockey's easily the hardest sport that I do. I mean, I'm not even close. It's very, very hard. This is through the glass. People tell me all the time, well, I can't get good hockey pictures. My rink is all messed up. It's all scuffed up with, you know, stick marks and puck marks and that kind of stuff. All of that will come out with the solvent they use to clean headlights. I can't remember what it's called now, but you can buff any single piece of plexiglass as long as it's not gouged, and it will come out. And you can make your piece of plexiglass somewhat optically correct. That's problem one, shooting through the glass at an ice hockey venue. Number 2 is that reflections. So, you know, don't kill yourself and wear a white shirt, you know, that's going to bounce right into the lens. The people around you, if they've got light colored shirts, I've actually bought shirts for the section around me, bought a dozen of them to here, black shirts here, put these on, put these on. And the other thing you can do is make a gobo or a big extended lens hood. You can make it, I make mine out of a neoprene knee sleeve, which is exactly, the opening in a neoprene knee sleeve is exactly the same size when you stretch it as a 77 millimeter lens front. So you stretch that over and then bend it out, and then you just fill it with tape, both sides, so it's black, and then you have a lens that you can bend on the plexiglass, and it'll keep all the reflections out from behind you. So it's just, you know, like obviously I do this for a living. You guys are hobbyists. It's a little different thing. But if you have a, you know, child or a grandchild or whatever it might be playing hockey, you know, you can make yourself look a lot better doing that. Okay, 7 things about hockey photographer. Number 1, it's a lot harder than it looks. Easily the hardest sport that I've ever photographed. Not even question. Number 2, it's all about the position. You got to be in the right spot to get good hockey pictures. Number 3, know the arena's positions and how to work them, which goes with number 4, the team photographer is your best friend. He's the guy that can always say, yeah, I think we can get you over in this spot, move this guy out, move this guy in. Have a good relationship with him always helps. Number 5, if you're shooting from ice level, have a plan for positioning yourself to make the photos and to keep yourself from annoying those very, very high dollar people that are sitting around you when you're sitting at the bottom of an aisle. In Montreal, those seats are about $250 a piece. You don't want to be putting your elbow in the ear of the person next to you. Number 6, keep your concentration and make your photos. Talk to the people around you only when the game is stopped. I'm the number 1 culprit of doing this because I lose my concentration very easily. Number 7, great hockey photos get me excited. I think it's when you get a really good hockey picture, I'm always really happy when I get a really good hockey picture. It's very hard. So, hockey positions. What I like in hockey is I would prefer to be almost head on up the ice. I always like to shoot into anything, have the action coming at me. Now, in the NHL arenas, they put holes in the plexiglass. You actually poke your lens through a hole. You can't do that at the end of the ice. They're not going to do that. That's like a tremendous liability. It also would affect the play because you could potentially have the puck go out of the play much easier. So the positions usually end somewhere right in here. And I would prefer to be in one of those corner positions. I can kind of see up the ice. I can't see all the way up the ice, but I can see most of the way up the ice. A lot of hockey photographers, guys who really do a lot of hockey, prefer to be on the left-hand side for a right-hand shooter. So they want to do it. Now, I frankly don't know enough about hockey to know whether there's more left-handers or more right-handers on our team. I'm not that good a hockey photographer. However, as a photojournalist, I do like to be on the side that faces into the bench because your reaction's going to happen that way. It's always a good thing to be on the side where you can look into the bench to see the photography. So, and that I pretty much stay that way all the time. Sometimes if I'm on a goalie story, like shooting goalie, I'll try to get clear up here so you can kind of shoot back at him. Overhead spots in hockey are sometimes good if you've got enough lens. Kind of lacks drama though because hockey's played on the ground. If you're shooting down, anytime they get knocked in the air or anything like that, there's not much drama to it. So that's what it looks like in Boston. They're kind of photographed. In hockey, when you're shooting with strobe, this is one of those sports that's a little bit unusual, and that's the crowd reaction because the crowd is so close, is oftentimes will add to the picture instead of subtract. Here, you can tell obviously, like the background doesn't detract from the picture. A lot of times your background is distracting. In this case, it doesn't hurt as much. Highs and lows, always. I went to a fight the other night and a hockey game broke out. In hockey, I keep a fisheye lens around my neck. I don't use it a lot, but occasionally, you are close enough and it's just right there. Kind of a nice, different look. The things go on in hockey that are inexplicable. I have no idea what's going on in this picture. I don't know how they end up in that position, but it's a nice image. The open ice checks that you see, like in this picture, don't happen as much in the NHL. The skaters are too good now. They can avoid them too easily. But when they happen, it's pretty dynamic hit. Talking about facing into the bench, just the championship game of some sort. We have the players coming right to the goalie. They're always going to come to the goalie. The question is, do you go to the goalie or go to the bench? In this case, I went to the bench, and it was the right decision. This is a setup picture I just did. Just did this in December. I won't bore you with the technical details because it is very technical. But the point is that when you're shooting for a layout, we're just a 2-page spread. You have to always be concerned about where they're going to put headline, where they're going to put type, all that kind of stuff. And then we illustrated this picture in such a manner that we could take care of all that. So soccer, I always tell, soccer is by far, to me, the easiest sport there is to photograph. When I do student groups, I always tell them, if you're not getting good soccer pictures, maybe you want to rethink your major. It's pretty simple, it's like, and it's continuous action. It never stops. So it's up and down the field, up and down the field. You should have more than adequate opportunities in a soccer game to get photographed. I don't do a lot of soccer. There's not a huge demand for it. I've done some over the years. I've done a couple World Cups, actually, but this is something else that people will frequently say to me. They say, well, you get great pictures. You go to the Super Bowl, you go to the NCAA championships, you go to this, you go to that. And this is my local high school. This is as good a picture as any other picture in here. The pictures are there for the making. You just have to select them and figure out where to make them. Another thing, well, we'll get into that later, but there's more soccer stuff. This is out here at the Meadowlands, actually. Cross country, it's a wonderful sport, beautiful sport. lacrosse. Anybody photograph lacrosse out there? Anybody? Do you understand it? No, nobody does. Nobody does. Even the coaches don't know, I'm sure, because all they do is
Springtime soccer.
Yeah, well, yeah, they go around in a circle. They go around in a circle. I'm getting dizzy watching them passing around in a circle, like a dog running in the front yard.
Girls lacrosse is endless.
And then they throw up a really bad shot, whatever it is. No, but it is a pretty good picture sport for photographs. I mean, they are, because the faces are for the most part exposed, and then those collisions, sometimes make really nice pictures. I mean, get a hit pretty hard, knock your face mask that far, your mouth guard that far out. I always say two best places to be early in the morning are the horse track and the golf course. There's always, the nice part about it, there's people out. You can be up at, 5 in the morning. If there's nobody there, it doesn't matter. There's always people out there and always people doing things. I always attribute this quote to Ansel Adams. Somebody told me the other day it isn't true, but I always attribute this quote to Ansel Adams, who I think said, sunset is for the photographer who is too lazy to get up for sunrise. The light, pretty spectacular here. This is a late autumn shoot for, I think, the PGA. Like, know your subjects. I mean, like I picked this kid out right out of the get-go, and this is like one of those PGA events where they, bring kids in and let them compete, and I think know who they are. They're always going to make a picture for you. This is a shoot I did for Canon. They asked me to teach a windsurfing class out in Hood River, Oregon, and I had never done windsurfing before. I said, sure, I'll do it, but I don't know anything about it. But I went out to Oregon, and I met up with some people I knew who knew something about it. And while it's not, I don't consider myself a windsurfing photographer, I can make a picture when, you depend on it. One of the things about that, the spray is really nice. The only thing, it has to be backlit. You have to have a dark background, and you have to have backlight to make that spray stand out. Same as the hockey picture we just showed you with the spray. If you don't have any backlight, making that spray stand out, you're not going to have anything. Or you will be. I shouldn't say you won't have anything. It won't be as dramatic as if it's backlit. Rowing, canoeing, all that stuff, always beautiful. Because the locations are so pretty. This is up in, they have Olympic Training Center up in Craftsbury, Vermont. Stock car, any stock car fans out there? Oh God, so, well, whatever. No, really, stock car is a brilliantly marketed sport. And actually, I don't dislike it. I just think it's so loud. I mean, my ears are getting sore just thinking about it, actually. I do the Sylvania 300 every year for Sylvania. They're a corporate client of mine. And, we go in as a team. I usually have 3 photographers working, or 2 photographers working with me, 3 of us. And I'm usually absorbed more in the corporate end of things, like doing the CEOs and the marketing people and all that kind of stuff and the events that go on inside the track. So I leave the guys to do the outside of the track, but I do try to challenge them and say, let's make something different. Let's get something that, like, it's going to be different for the client. So we take a lot of looks at stuff like this. That's like probably, I don't have the metadata with me, but probably a 15th or a 20th of a second. The Olympics, nothing better than the Olympics. There is no such thing as a bad Olympics. I heard somebody say the Sochi Olympics were awful Olympics. I didn't go, but it said there's no such thing as a bad Olympics. My responsibilities in the Winter Olympics have always been speed skating and hockey. So I've learned a little bit about it. I don't really understand a lot about it, but if you don't know something about speed skating, you just go ask the Dutch photographer. The Dutch, that's their sport. It's like baseball or football is here, and they speak English, which is a really, easy. Actually, when you go to a Dutch photographer and you say, how's this race going to go? 1,000-meter race. They'll actually go through your sheet and mark it. This guy's going to win, that guy's going to win, this guy's going to win, and then hand it back to you and say, here you go, you're all done. They're that good. They know it cold. This is interesting too. Olympic hockey. Olympic hockey is played on a bigger sheet of ice. It wasn't in Vancouver, but every other Olympics except for Vancouver. So I think regular NHL sheet is 120 feet long. This is 160. People say, oh, there's not as much hitting because of that, because they have more room. There's actually, in my mind, there's more hitting. And one of the reasons why is you've got 8 finalists in the Olympic hockey, and usually about 5 of them are from what was the former Soviet Union, and they all hate each other, desperately hate each other, and they would so you have all these, open ice hits and stuff, and cheap shots too among those teams. Speed skating is a short track speed skating, another sport I completely don't understand. They skate around in the circle forever. Somebody passes somebody, somebody knocks somebody down, but in the end, the Koreans always win. The Dutch even control the music at speed skating. Speed skating, this is a 10,000 millimeter race. Okay, so it's a 500 meter track. It's going around 20 times. You have plenty of opportunities to experiment. This picture I put in, you look at the width of the blade. It's a pretty narrow. Just to stay upright on that is pretty amazing. Much less to skate on it. Skate very fast on it. Women's ice hockey. It used to be the gap between the Americans and Canadians was almost insurmountable. They would beat teams, 15-0. It's closing. Every Olympics I've done, it's gotten a little bit tighter. This is Finland. They're always pretty good in hockey. This is the Vancouver Olympics were very much predicated by the Canadians winning both the men's and women's gold. That was a lot of the planning around that Olympics and from the Canada standpoint, was based on them winning. This is when Finland, I think, beat, I don't remember, one of those formers. You can see it. The United States actually beat Canada in pool play in that Olympics and then lost to them in the final. This is actually in that game where the United States, defeated Canada no, this is not Canada, this is Finland. Now, this is a remote camera at the Olympics. I put this out because if your remotes are timed well, you'll notice. Okay, so you have, see the position of the puck in this photograph. So you have the puck there in that angle, the puck in the same spot in that angle, and then the puck in the same spot in this angle. So it's 3 different remotes, 3 different pictures, 3 different options. So the Vancouver Olympics were predicated very much on the idea that Sidney Crosby was going to go on the cover of Sports Illustrated if the Canadians won the gold medal. So we kind of knew that going in, and this was a possibility, but it's from a semifinal game. It really needed to come out of the gold medal game. And I remember shooting this picture and thinking, this could be a cover, and that's what it became. It was a cover, and it was my one and only Olympic cover, so I'm very, very proud of that photograph. I've had 70 covers, as I mentioned earlier, altogether. Some of them memorable, some not so memorable. It's my very first cover back here, Tony Dorsett, in 1988. Yeah, a long time ago. But you can notice, sometimes covers are pretty good pictures. Just a good picture. That's a pretty good picture. That ain't bad. But then a lot of times they're like this or like that. Not necessarily. It a lot depends on what, because covers have a lot to do with newsstand sales. So they really want pictures that have fan appeal through the newsstand. So baseball, kind of getting near the end of the major sports now. So baseball, easily the most cerebral sport to cover. I think it's if I can keep my concentration, I really like to do baseball, but it's a concentration sport. So 7 things about baseball. Baseball is the most cerebral sport to cover. The situational possibilities are endless. So people say, what do you mean? Okay, so what I mean is, if there's runners on first and second, you have a potential force play at second, third, and first. You have a right-handed hitter up, left-handed pitcher, but the left-handed batter is a push hitter, so he often hits it to the third base side. There's always all these things to think about, like where the ball's going to go. And you can't, because the ball comes so fast off the bat, you can't follow the play. You can't get the guy swinging and then get to the shortstop or third baseman or second baseman or whoever it might be. So you have to anticipate on all that stuff. Number 3, know the players and their tendencies, same thing. Is this guy a pull hitter? Is he a push hitter? Is the pitcher a fastball pitcher? Is it a pitcher that on 3-0 always, or 3-1, always throws a curveball? Fastball, whatever it might be, so you can anticipate where the play might go. Number 4, don't be scared to change your position. It's a really long season, and that's one of the things that I try to do a lot, is I try to go to a new park, someplace I haven't been before. That's always a treat, because you have the opportunity to shoot from different positions. Number 5, be ready for the action. It's almost over before it starts. A lot of times, you play at third base, boom, immediately over to second base, boom, over to first base. I mean, sometimes you'll hit all positions in one play. And if you're, eating popcorn and not paying attention, you're probably not going to get that. Number 4, or number 5, be ready for the action. So if I did that. Number 6, what's happening in the dugout, the bullpen, the crowd, all things that contribute to your coverage. Number 7, what does the defense tell you about the offense? I often look at the field and see which way the fielders are shading the batter. If they're shading to the right, I think they think that the play is going to happen on the right-hand side. Shading left, the same thing. So, these are all things those are just observational things that go on. Baseball position. So I like being inside in baseball stadiums that have inside position because I'm looking into the action again. I don't care quite as much about the batters. It's like I'm more into the fielding plays than I am the batting plays. So having a head-on view, which you would get more from out here of the batter, is not as important to me as being able to see the fielders. That being said, I spend a lot of time in the outside position because in Boston, where I shoot most of my baseball, there are no inside positions, only outside positions. We talked about having a camera around your neck, 50 millimeter lens in football, fisheye in hockey. In baseball, it's a 70 to 200. I've set it at about 135 millimeters, and you won't get a lot of pictures over the course of the season, but you will get some, and they'll usually be pretty good. And also in a critical situation, like the one I always use is like when A-Rod tried to slap the ball out of, it looked like he was, trying to steal his purse. All the guys, I don't know if you guys remember this now, but that was a really rainy night, and a lot of photographers had rain covers on their gear, so when they went to pick it up, they were fumbling and they couldn't get to it. And a lot of people missed that picture because of that. So certain players always make pictures. I'm going to show you a sequence here, Dustin Pedroia. He's just really good for pictures. A lot of screaming in Boston baseball. They do a lot of screaming, Yeah, screaming again, there they go. The ability to make these pictures in the outfield. If you can see the outfield, that's really critical. They do some amazingly athletic things now. They keep getting better. Athletically, the players keep getting better in baseball. And look how high he is off the ground there. He's way up there. That is a low angle. It's not real low, but it's a low angle. But even still, he's way up in the air. It was the 100th anniversary of Fenway Park 2 years ago. The grounds crew guy's a buddy of mine. I couldn't get in. All the various entities were doing their own books. Major League Baseball was doing a book. The Boston Red Sox were doing a book. Sports Illustrated was doing a book. The entities besides Sports Illustrated have a vested interest in not having me into the park. I mean, they weren't like, they know you can't come in. They just made it difficult to do. So I connived my way in through the grounds crew to do a lot of pictures, and this is kind of things that we get in a ballpark that's 100 years old. These marks, I always put this in because those are every one of those marks is when a ball hits the wall. The tin actually dents, and then that's what it looks like close up sometimes. Sometimes you can even make out the writing on the baseball. Pretty cool, It's a quaint little place. It's a little small for me. I always feel like I'm crowded everywhere I am in Fenway. They cheat. They don't chalk the line. They cheat there. They paint it. That's what the park looks like from the outside. Varying your angles. Here's the pan shot. From baseball, it's long season. Doing something different inside the dugout. Another thing. This is actually taken at Yankee Stadium, not in Boston, but. The celebrations at the end of the games are always good in baseball. They've made celebrations at the end of the game for the relief pitcher in baseball into pretty much a theatrical act. I mean, it's pretty much, they're up there. If they get done playing baseball, they're pretty much ready for Broadway. Derek Jeter. I just did an exhibit. I opened an exhibit yesterday, actually, and trying to pick among all these championship jumping in the air things was problematic because I've done a lot of them. This is the center field. This is in Texas at the stadium in Dallas when San Francisco won maybe 4 years ago. Detroit, Miguel Cabrera. This is kind of a nice picture from center field in Detroit. So you see what this looks like. There's the last guy making an out. A lot of information in the picture. Not a great picture, but a lot of information in it. And this is what the Cabrera cover looked like from the ALCS, and then this is what the World Series cover looked like from the same situation. You know, put the camera on the ground here, you know, throwback uniform day, give a sense of the park. This is what my life has been reduced to. I'm shooting the monkey, throwing out the first pitch now. This was the 100th anniversary of Fenway and also opening day. This is kind of a nice moment. We got the Jets flying overhead and everything. You know, the opening day is always a special event. I love to go to opening day. Everybody's in first place on opening day, you know. It's not. This was my favorite baseball picture for the remote shot from the College World Series, an event that is a wonderful event to cover. It's a remote camera again. So people often say to me, I said this earlier, oh, you get great pictures because you go to. I also go to, I've had 3 children, I've raised 2 of them, one's still at home. I also go to a lot of events like this, where my daughter's playing in a game or my son was playing in a game or something. And I actually think sometimes the pictures are better at those. I mean, they're more, like you're never gonna go in an NBA arena and get light like that. There's no way, you know? That's pretty spectacular light. You know, I do a lot of small college stuff now. I have some corporate clients. I do the small college stuff. If you're doing volleyball, the action will always come back to whoever hit the play. Always, every single time. Field hockey, tough board to photograph, not a lot of action. You know, I like the small college stuff. It can be right on the side. You'd be in the bench area, you know. It's like get some different stuff. Get moments like this that you just, you know, you're not going to get that anywhere. Like, you know, like Mark Sanchez isn't going to bring his son down the field after the Jets game or whatever. You know, moments like this in small college. And plus, they're they're not inhibited in any way because you're the only photographer there. So it's like to them, this is all, your presence is very novel. You know, the bench is always good. End of the game. These are also, boy, this is the arena at Bentley. This is really dark. This is like 4,000 ISO, dark. You know, people say, well, you get good pictures at your soccer venue, but our soccer venue has parking lots on 3 different sides. And I said, so does mine. So how do you get around that? One is by using the light so that you're shooting in such a manner that your background is not illuminated. So backlit in some situation, or just following the light. This is side lit, but there's no light. It's down so low that the light is falling off the background. Same thing here. Now you did notice there is a little, you know, it should have been a black SUV back there and I've been okay. I do Exeter and Andover. I do some of their photography, you know, a lot of nice stuff from there. You know, these reaction pictures are so predictable, you know, because they know where they're coming. There's a crowd, you know, good stuff. You know, soccer, you know. I just think soccer, the pictures are just always there. You should never miss, you should never come back to a soccer game and not have something pretty good. You know, I put this picture in because there's like, the light on this picture is so phenomenal. And like, you just can't get that light in any kind of a venue where there's any height, any elevation to it because the light the sun sets behind the stadium all the time. You know, again, talking about the rule earlier, it's always going to come down to, the light will always come down to what you expect it to do. It's a project I worked on before I was married. I had a dream of doing a book about Native American athletes. This is shot on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota, the Rosebud Reservation in South Dakota. This is up on the Lummi Reservation in Washington, Bellingham, Washington. This guy's name, and I'm not making this up, is Michael Jordan. And he's a legendary Indian basketball player. He's from Seattle. He has an old boxer called this guy Indian Jack Wagner. This is an Olympic gold medal. This guy was really interesting. He was the captain of the 1948 Olympic team in London. And he's a Choctaw, I think. I can't remember for sure. He's dead now. But I had to track him down. I had a really hard time finding him. I eventually found him in an alcohol rehabilitation center in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, a drunk tank for veterans. And found him, and like, he was so excited to see me. He was so excited. And he came out and he had his gold medal in his pocket, like So he had this gold medal in his pocket, and he said, "You ever see an Olympic gold medal up close?" I said, "No, I never have." I said, "You know," he said, "Well, here." And he held his hand up and he dropped it at me from like this far, and it literally drove your hand down. The thing weighs like 5 pounds. It's like in those days, they think they were still solid gold. So he was always very proud. He was very proud of the fact that he'd had plenty of battles in life, but he never gave up his Olympic gold medal. He said, "I sold just about everything I ever had in my life to drink," but he said, "I never gave up my gold medal." This is a sport. This is a precursor to lacrosse. It's called stickball. Played on the Choctaw Reservation down in Philadelphia, Mississippi. Pretty brutal sport, pretty tough. This is up in Alaska. I did a thing on basketball in the Arctic, kind of a novel concept. 0 degrees out. I mean, guys don't have gloves on. They're very, very tough up there, very hardy. Indiana high school basketball, and did a piece for Sports Illustrated that we ended up turning into a book. Really good assignment, like a 10-day assignment out in Indiana, really good. The coach there actually is still a really good friend of mine. I talk to him probably a couple times a month. Let's talk about having your camera up all the time, So I'm actually going into, what do you guess? I'm going in to go to the bathroom, I'm an old guy, and this situation unfolded in front of me. The crowd and the locker room. These are always hard shots to take. I mean, difficult. You can't take these photographs in college or professional sports anymore. You're not allowed in the locker room. But when you have the opportunity, even though it's painful to do for you, portraits. I do a fair amount of portraiture now. A lot more portraits than I would have thought. This is Louis Tiant, an old Red Sox pitcher. I do Runner's World, stuff like that. This is a client I have that does the NRA. Another NRA portrait. Pretty scary guys. These are special ops guys that are, like Army Rangers and Navy SEALs and stuff like that, The portrait I did for the MPPA, the National Press Photographers Magazine. Boxing portraits are always great. You get an opportunity to shoot boxing portraits are always fun. Get a chance to go over to Gleason's gym, which I just saw something on the other day on TV. Great place to go. This is kind of an interesting picture. We shot this. I was sitting in the trunk of a rental car somebody was driving, and then we put a strobe inside the cabin and lit that up. And then if you use a gyro on your camera, you can actually keep all those lines straight. I had gyro with me, elected not to. I thought it looked better with the lines being kind of out of focus, squiggly. China, the next great sports frontier, if it isn't already. This is what a shoot looks like, and we're trying to do things. Sports Illustrated came to me and said, "We need to do a cover of this guy for newsstand sales only." I said, "But we don't have a gym, we don't even have a uniform, and we want to shoot it tomorrow." I said, "Okay, well, this will be challenging." So the basketball court wasn't down because the hockey ice was in, so we managed to find the old court and talk the recreation office into setting up the old court in the recreation facility, half of it. And we came in and we did all these things, and this is what we ended up with because it needed to be something that could be cut out and the background inserted into it. So we shot it on a black background. This is an event that we photographed for the NRA magazine that we do. The client I work with, one of these like Tough Mudder things. They're pretty interesting events. If you can, photographs are pretty interesting in those. A lot of physical work. You have to get around a lot of different places. They're usually on an old ski mountain or something like that. The graphic elements are something you have to identify when you're working on things. You could have done the finish all day long. I just chose to do like a little bit of it because I felt like the whole course end of it was more interesting. So, just really quickly, a project I did for the town I live in. It was the 300th anniversary last year. I shot a series of portraits for the town, a pro bono project, and then did a little exhibit. These are people all live in the town where I live, in Lexington, Massachusetts. This is the bell tower where the British were coming. That's the bell tower was. They rang the bell, the belfry they call it. The high school football camp. The opportunity to do pictures like these, I think is really, of course I made the opportunity, but it's a really nice thing to do. It's yoga, pretty interesting stuff. The symphony, civil rights stuff, farmers. This is this guy can actually trace his ancestry to the Mayflower. So I say, no, you can. He said, yeah, I can transfer I can trace my ancestry to the Mayflower. And I said, the ship or the moving company? These are my kids, my youngest daughter playing sports, and then my oldest daughter playing sports. And this is actually a magazine assignment. You notice a shot for a cover. It's like the cover goes up here on the top. She had a really unusual knee surgery when she was only in the 7th grade. And then they used her as an illustration. And they had a photographer all assigned to do it, and she got sick. And they said, my wife said, well, my husband could probably do it. And so we ended up doing it for a hospital magazine. And that's what the Strohmeyers look like. And my children, my beautiful wife, is also a photographer. I always tell people I'm only the 2nd best photographer in our family, you know. It's me with 2 of my brothers at the Bruins game. Oh, 5 things I believe. I'll end this up with this. Right, we're doing pretty good on time, right? Good. Okay, 5 things. Treat everyone with a proper amount of respect. You know, you're not that important. Number 2, family comes first. Number 3, never stop learning. Number 4, the 3 most important words in the world are I love you, followed closely by I am sorry. And the 2 most important words are thank you, and the single most important word is please. Number 5, realize the world doesn't revolve around you. So, that's it. Everybody good? All right. I guess we're knocking it off then. Thank you.
Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, B&H has the answers to your questions. Experience a world of technology at our New York City Superstore. Connect with us online or give us a call. Our staff of experts is happy to help.